Hey folks, welcome to another VR video, and it's also an AR video, and it's also a me sitting here talking to you for most of this video. Recently I got to attend Augmented World Expo, or AWE USA 2021 in Santa Clara, California, and it was my first time back to a VR and AR focused conference in a very long time. The last time I really got to spend a lot of time with a bunch of VR and AR hardware that I hadn't tried before was CES 2020. And then, of course, the pandemic kind of shut everything down. I did get to attend a ton of online conferences, including a couple of AWE events in 2020. That's where I discovered such things as the Lynx R1, as an example, as well as the Pico Neo 3, and a bunch of other products that were forthcoming at the time and are just now starting to enter into the market. So it was exciting to still have that online experience, but there's nothing like actually being around 3,000 other passionate members of the VR and AR communities. And that's what I got to experience in Santa Clara on the second week of November. So what I'm going to do in this video is going to be a little bit different than what I usually do in these recap videos. I'm going to talk through some of, but not all of, the experiences that I got to have because there's just too much. And I don't really feel like doing part 1, part 2, part 3. There's a huge, overwhelming abundance of things that I got to check out. And that I got to experience over the 3 days of AWE. And I just want to convey that up front. If you want to learn more, I was recently on the F-Reality podcast. You can find that as episode 190, either on their channels or via SoundCloud or other places where you can download and listen to podcasts. So if you want to hear some more of my thoughts, that's another place that you can get them. But what I'm going to do right now is just kind of jump into some topics. It's going to be kind of haphazard. I didn't really put together a script. I just put together some notes, and we're going to wing it. And then maybe I'll do something a little bit more constructive. I actually went to this conference as press. I got to cover the conference as press due to my involvement with VR Trend Magazine and also with my YouTube channel. So although I didn't record any video, really, I did attend a bunch of sessions. And the first session of the day on day 1, after the opening keynote, was with Niantic's John Hanke. And a long, long time ago, before I got into virtual reality, I started playing a game called Ingress. And I was intrigued to start this game because they had a whole alternate reality game to kick off the game, and some of the locations that they featured in that sort of teaser alternate reality game were really close to where I worked in San Francisco at the time. Turned out the game actually was beta tested in the San Francisco Bay Area. I joined that beta, and the rest was history. I played Ingress for a very long time. So long, actually, that later in the day at AWE, I was actually one of the people in one of the photo montages in a panel about Ingress. But John's panel was focusing on the launch of Lightship, which is the AR development kit that Niantic launched the Monday prior to AWE. And that particular development kit focuses on 3 different things. One is connecting people together, having up to 5 players of multiplayer at a time, using mobile devices at the current time, but potentially expanding out to other hardware in the future. Also, a meshing capability that allows the software to actually separate out different types of ground, different types of objects, and the sky when it's looking at the world around you. So it actually can separate out whether it's concrete, for example, versus grass, or a lake versus sand. and then a tree versus a building, and then of course the sky above. And it's pretty impressive the way that it does that. And then also getting that spatial awareness to also be able to collide with buildings or have occlusion where the characters that are in your game might be able to like go hide behind a couch, for example, and then come out on the other side. So some sophisticated functionality that's available right now in the Niantic Lightship AR development kit. And so John's talk mostly focused on Lightship, but also what Niantic wants to bring into the world. They talked about the emergence of VR and AR technology, their focus, of course, being on AR, and how they can bring together communities in the real world using AR as a layer to bring them together. And again, I can attest to the fact that Niantic products have done that in the past. I still have some of my best friends that came from playing Ingress, and Niantic is continuing to grow what they're calling reality channels with their software and with their partners to, again, try to bring communities together. And with more people coming together, trying to do good things, hopefully they can offset some of the potential dystopian things that others seem to be on a path to lead us to. So it was a really well-spoken talk. I am extremely interested in Lightship. I actually tried a Lightship demo. I have the Lightship AR DK on my PC. I just haven't had time to actually dive into it. Sometime in 2022, they're going to be adding some of their mapping capabilities through games like Ingress, Pokemon Go, Harry Potter, Catan, and now Pikmin Bloom. There's been a ton of players going out and visiting real-world locations as part of their gameplay. And particularly with Ingress, one of the things that you could do is identify portals. And those portals were typically different landmarks in the area or different specific sculptures or historical buildings, things of that nature. And what they've, in the past year or so, done is actually expanded out the ability to, instead of just submitting a picture of those portals, submitting a 3D scan of the sculpture or artwork or what have you. And those 3D scans now are being used to help map out a 3D map of the world. It's a pretty ambitious task. They have incentivized players by giving them medals and things of that nature in the game, digital objects, to help submit these scanned items. But it's an interesting path that they're taking forward. Again, you can do some harm by having a 3D map of the whole world, but I truly do feel like Niantic is trying to put their best interests at hand and have people come together to admire that art. Or in the example that they gave in one of the presentations, they had a fountain that they actually placed like a geocaching card. Again, digital representation of a card inside the fountain, and you could find that for an upcoming game that they're working on. They didn't divulge further than just saying this is for something we're working on now. But that geocaching experience, that, oh, I can find something that someone else placed here, or I can work together with others to find something, is something that's always intrigued me about their titles. And they also, can bring people to specific businesses. When they first started Ingress, one of the things that they had was a promotion with Jamba Juice. So they can drive people to come to your particular local or chain business. It's impressive how their technology can shift your mindset a bit. But again, keeping the real world as part of that framework at all times. So very excited to see what comes from the Niantic Lightship AR development kit from developers around the world. Right now it's a free option, and I believe they're actually going to keep it free for up to a certain amount of money made on the application, similar to how Unity and other game engines currently work. Moving on from Niantic a bit, Qualcomm at basically the same day, same time frame, announced Qualcomm Spaces, and what that is their AR development kit, and they're actually going to be using some specific AR hardware for the opening phase of working with Spaces. So for that particular development kit, the hardware that's being used is the Lenovo ThinkReality A3 with a Qualcomm-powered, probably Motorola device, because Lenovo and Motorola are one company. And they're opening up that toolkit to a small select number of developers right now, and it's going to grow based off of an application process. But they're really focused on, right now, a system that uses glasses connected to a secondary device. Obviously, future state, there's probably going to be just glasses by themselves and other options, maybe just using the phone by itself, that utilize the Spaces technology. But I was intrigued mostly from one of the last things that was said in Steve Lucas's presentation about Qualcomm Spaces, which was a demo that he did using Spatiate, which is an application that he had worked on for Magic Leap back in the day. And he had made a mobile version of Spatiate on a phone and used the phone as the primary device, drawing out whatever he wanted to on the touchscreen of the phone, and then using the glasses, he could map that as a 3D image or 3D environment, and it was really cool. So seeing that possibility, kind of the inverse of how my Nreal Light, for example, work, where the phone is basically a controller, and that's it, and then the glasses are where all the experience is. So you'd have to guide your phone and things of that nature around the room to actually draw. Here you'd be drawing on the phone, but where your glasses are looking or where you're moving in the environment is what's controlling that. So it was a very unique spin on how augmented reality experiences can work with a two-in-one type of system. And I'm really intrigued by that, and I'm excited to see what other developers bring to the Qualcomm Spaces platform in the future. Both of these things that I've just mentioned, nothing really exists right now, because this is just putting those tools into developers' hands. I don't know what devices will be supported by either Lightship or Spaces in the future, but the possibilities are really good right now, and it was really awesome to see both of these pieces of technology emerging at the same time as we all converged on AWE. Moving into VR for a moment. One of the presentations I went to was actually about VR in a car. Now, I have tried virtual reality on an airplane with both the Oculus Go and the Oculus Quest, and while it's usable, VR headsets on a moving vehicle are a little weird. A company called Holoride, though, is working to actually make those VR or AR experiences in your car into kind of your own little destination while you're trying to get to your destination. They actually have a pretty cool looking demo. They brought on Schell from Schell Games, and he talked through a project he's been working on with them called Cloudbreaker. Now, how Cloudbreaker and other Holoride titles will work is using the car's navigation data and other data coming from the car's computer. It will pull in that data and say maybe the car stopped. It will sense that the car stopped. It'll sense the location of where the car stopped. It'll sense the radar from the car that sees that there's a person standing in a certain spot in front of you, potentially. And it'll take all of that information in wirelessly to your VR device, and it'll cater the experience while you're in headset to the surroundings around you. So in the commercial that they showed, there was a woman sitting in the back seat of the car. and as the car was driving, people walking across crosswalks would be a certain way, and she could tap them with a wand and they'd turn into something else, and just different silliness. I don't know that it's really that advanced right now, but the Cloudbreaker demo was kind of intriguing because it seems like it's something that's actually a product at this point. And the whole concept of Holoride, at least based on the marketing materials, seemed to be making it so if you're going somewhere, you're not bored on that trip there. One of the statements that sticks with me from the ad was, "Wow, are we there already?" As opposed to the spin of typically you'd hear, "Are we there yet?" So, trying to make commutes or drives more exciting. Now, what they showed seems to only work in specific cars. They mentioned that the first cars that will have the ability to use this service will be in model year 2023, so coming out next fall at the earliest. I don't think this would work on a bus. I don't think this would work on a train. I don't think this would work on a plane because of the way that it's all designed. So I'm not really sure, like, is this something you'd do in a taxi? Is this something you'd use an Uber and you'd strap into a headset for? It's kind of perplexing to me, but I'm excited to see someone do a little different spin on virtual reality. So, wanted to mention it here. Holoride is coming next year sometime, so if you see a way to do a demo, I unfortunately didn't make the cut for their demos at AWE, but check it out. Let me know what you think. And as far as talks, the last talks I want to go through are both VR related, but in different ways. One was a presentation by OpenBCI, who are a company making brain-computer interfaces. And the project that you may have heard of that they're working on is called Galea. And Galea is a partnership right now. They're working with Valve and other partners to develop a passive brain-computer interface that can attach to the back of a head-mounted display device, and use some of your brainwave activity to actually interact with applications. What I found fascinating about the panel is they were very transparent about how their company works, the work that they're doing, and how Galea has emerged. They've done work with active brain-computer interfaces where you're actually wearing a brain-computer interface to do things like learn how to use a robotic arm or a robotic leg, to just control it using brainwave activity and micro gestures from your face, for example. And also learning how to drive. They had a kart racing game, essentially, where you were able to drive a vehicle, again, in a computer simulation, using just specific micro gestures using your face. And that type of thing is empowering to disabled people. For example, if you don't have use of your arms and you still need to steer a vehicle, maybe raising your eyebrows could do that, or turning your lips a specific way, things of that nature. So it's very powerful stuff. And in addition to working on that active brain-computer interface work, they've also worked on these passive devices. One of the things that came up toward the end of that presentation was the fact that this is a very real device. They've tested it with around 12 people that they've been working on as researchers, and a beta is coming as a real product sometime in 2022. There are over 1,000 applicants for the beta already, but if you do choose to, you can apply at galea.co. It's galea.co. Good luck. I'm not really that interested in brain-computer interfaces. I know some folks like Brad Lynch, who has a YouTube channel and talks about this type of stuff all the time, is probably one of the people that's like chomping at the bit to get into this. I'm not really one of those people at the current time. I'm more in the survey results category. There was a survey at the end where they were talking about people you'd be concerned having your brainwave activity. And I was concerned with literally all of those people, from clinicians and medical personnel all the way up to, say, Google or Meta at the other end of the spectrum. And of course, I also share the concerns of, I don't want to have someone have mind control over me, or have access to my thoughts, or be able to recognize me by my brainwave activity. It's just kind of weird to me. Is there a future where these types of things will become commonplace? Most likely. But I don't need to be at the front of that line, if that makes sense. But I did find the panel to be absolutely fascinating. And the last panel I want to touch on, I didn't attend in person, but I have watched. And it was by a gentleman named Avi Bar-Zeev, who talked about how at one point in time we had a term called cyberspace. And that was going to be the future. That was in the 90s. And now if you think about the word cyber, you think about cybersecurity or cybersex, and not really cyberspace anymore. There's another term that starts with the letter M that seems to be following that same pattern. I don't want to use that term on this channel. I think if I keep saying that it starts with the letter M and it ends in verse, for example, you probably know what I'm talking about. But he made a really good point, and I agree that that's the term, that's the buzzword of the times. That's probably not the term that's going to stick with the world in the future. Versing might be a multiplayer thing. That might be the term that sticks moving forward. But the entire world of the internet and building layers of alternate, augmented, mixed, and virtual reality on top of it, it's still the internet underneath, really. I still believe this. The panel talked about that as well. And you're not really building anything new. You're just enhancing what we already have. And the panel was really well thought out, very entertaining. Once it hits YouTube and it's freely available, I definitely encourage going and checking it out. The slides are available from it, as well as a companion article. I'll put links to those in the comments, or in the description for this video, rather. Check it out. It's pretty good stuff, and it really relates to a lot. So if you go to my Twitter right now, it says that my location is the whateverse. That comes from that particular panel, which I believe he actually stole from someone else, so credit to the original innovator who came up with that term, whoever they may be, because that was probably also stolen from somebody else. But I really liked seeing that kind of affirmation for me that calling the internet is still okay. I don't use the term XR either. I call things VR and AR. That may be an outdated term at this point, but I understand things better as virtual reality or augmented reality. If I call it XR, it kind of confuses me as someone that's in this community on a regular basis. So I can't even imagine talking to a layperson who has no idea what I'm talking about XR. That's my opinion on these things. And I do definitely encourage checking out his panel. If you're a fan of things like Galaxy Quest, you're really going to enjoy especially the opening bits of the panel. It's good stuff. And also Steve Lucas's panel on Qualcomm Spaces has a lot of pop culture references in it, lots of entertainment. So when AWE panels hit the internet, those are the two I would recommend watching for entertainment purposes. I do want to shout out to Antony Vitillo, or Skarredghost, as you may know him. Has the Ghost Howls blog on the internet, as well as a prolific Twitter and YouTube user and game developer. He had an awesome panel about his game and pitfalls that he experienced, and ways that he could improve that he shared with the rest of the attendees. And I really want to give him credit, first of all, for traveling to the United States for the first time to give this presentation and to attend this conference, but also the fact that almost the entire panel discussion that he gave was to improve what others do and not to advertise his game. All that being said, so available on App Lab is Hitmotion Reloaded. It's a demo, it's freely available. Check it out. If you happen to be a venture capitalist and you enjoyed it, help them make the full version of the game, please. QR code that was just on the screen is also related to the game, so just hold your phone up and you can load it onto your Quest. That about does it for talks at AWE. Now I'm going to move into some of the demo experiences. I've talked about some of the devices that I'm about to talk about before, but I got my head and hands in a bunch of different things over the next couple of days at AWE. The first day was really just focused on presentations. There were demos, but there were no exhibit hall hours for that day. So I actually decided I'm going to focus solely on panels for the first day. Second day I focused on almost entirely demos, and the third day as well. So I did check out the ThinkReality A3. I own a Nreal Lite device. The ThinkReality A3 is a little bit faster. I think it's because it actually has a Qualcomm XR1 chip embedded in the glasses as opposed to being completely dependent on a phone or other device, whereas the Nreal Lite is completely processor controlled by the device it's tethered to. Outside of that snappiness, I didn't really notice much difference. The field of view was about the same, the picture clarity was about the same, the functionality seemed to be about the same. I will say Qualcomm recently acquired ClayAir, which is a company that has done a really good job with building hand interactions for the Nreal Lite. I'm assuming with Qualcomm owning them that those types of hand interactions will get better and better on all of these XR viewer devices. I tried another one called the Oppo AR Glass, and that Oppo system was a slight downgrade, I would say, from the Nreal Lite. Their hand interactions were not very good at all. Field of view was about the same, clarity was about the same, but you could tell just based on the control scheme kind of being stuttery and not as good, that from a software perspective, each of these devices, that software is going to make a difference, whereas the hardware might be almost identical. And that's what the experience I'm having right now with a lot of these XR viewers or AR viewers, as they call them XR viewers because you can put a little shield over them and it'll make them into VR devices, but only 3DOF VR devices because you're covering up the tracking cameras and the depth sensors by putting that shield over the top of it. Outside of those AR glasses, I did check out the Campfire 3D system, which was very reminiscent to me of the Meta 2 headset. I think they use the same optics and a very similar configuration as far as how the device mounts to your head. The Campfire device, though, is currently intended to be used by collaborative designers, and they have this little X pattern, I want to say like locator or tracking system or beacon that goes on a table or another surface. And what that does is it centrally locates what everyone's looking at. So for example, if I was looking at an image of the headset, the blueprints for it, and I blew out that design, when I blow out the design, somebody standing on the other side of the table would be able to see the other side of that design. And they could see that I had activated to blow out the design, or they could see that I had annotated a specific piece of the components of that design for them to maybe take action on or something of that nature. There was no hand tracking involved. What they did is they added this little pack to the bottom of a mobile device, and that pack was basically allowing you to use your phone as a clicker or laser pointer, similar in a lot of ways to how AR glasses currently work using a phone as a controller. I really like my Meta 2 headset. It's got a 90+ degree field of view. It's not uncomfortable, and the way that they built that particular device was really to encourage human in-person interaction. It was built with the means to actually see the world around you while you were doing things inside the headset. And so having the Campfire system at least kind of carry on some of that, I'm excited to see what becomes of it. I don't think right now it's practical for anyone outside of potentially if you're working in some type of prototyping or design company. And if you are, they would be a good company to reach out to if you're trying to do some type of collaborative 3D modeling or design that would benefit from having shared AR experiences. The Campfire system isn't limited just to the headset and pack. You can also access their software and collaborate using flat computer screens, mobile devices, tablets, things of that nature. So it's not limited to just their device. Their software can actually pull in multiple screens, multiple environments. But to get that kind of 3D effect where you're all in a shared space, looking at something from multiple angles, you definitely would need at least one of the headsets and that little X location beacon, I would say. After going to the Campfire booth, I did check out some optics. Now, not inside headsets, mind you, but just the lenses themselves. So I looked at some waveguide optics by a company called Dispelix. They really impressed me. They were single layer, very, very thin waveguide optics, and the clarity on them was pretty darn good. I could read text really well. Again, these things are built for a smaller field of view at the current time, so I think it was like 30 to 40 degrees field of view. But it was a very clear image, and that's what impresses me with these types of things at this point, is the thinness and clarity, and not necessarily the field of view. Adding to the field of view can sometimes add weight, add bulk, and things of that nature at the current time. For Campfire, as an example, it's a huge bulky device, but it affords a larger field of view. So you've got the trade-offs in all of those different directions. So Dispelix and another company called ST were both exhibiting different types of optics. ST had a system that was laser based, so it would basically shoot down lasers, and that's where your RGB colors for your full color display came from. So it's a very sharp image on a very thin layer, again, and very clear, very readable, probably also very readable if you were outdoors in daylight, for example. And their product is trying to be added into things like smart glasses, where you're maybe trying to get an arrow for navigation, or what your current heart rate is, or things of that nature to display in front of your eye, like a HUD or heads-up display. So two, again, different spins on these very thin, very light lenses. And who's to say someone might pick up that lens technology and incorporate it into their next device. So I just was curious to see what they had to offer. I was impressed with both, but again, there's not really a product that I can talk to. There's not a price point or things of that nature as we go. Next, I moved on to the VR world for a while, out of AR and into VR. Nice refreshing change. Oh, everything was great. But I tried the Pico Neo 3 Pro for the first time, and I had seen it multiple times last year at different conferences online, but I'd never had the chance to experience it for myself. It is very similar in a lot of ways to the Oculus Quest 2. Screen resolution is a little bit better. There was definitely more options for capturing within the Pico Neo product. I really wish that the Quest would take some of those options. You could change from the 1:1 square to a 16:9 or 4:3, change the frames per second of your recordings, things of that nature, right from within the device. I would like those features in the Quest 2 that I use on a regular basis, but overall, it didn't really stand apart in a means that I would say, oh yeah, pick up a Pico Neo 3, or in the United States, Pico Neo 3 Pro over the Quest 2, unless you're a business customer. If you're looking for, a lot of folks on the show floor, for example, were using the Pico Neo 3 for demos. Um, and or if you're using it for arcade experiences, or you're using it for training, things of that nature. Oculus devices at this point, I don't believe in most areas have the ability to be used in business situations. You can purchase through Oculus for business, but you can't use it in an arcade, for example. There's no arcade licensing, as far as I'm aware, for those devices. So you'd want to move to something like the Pico Neo 3 or another device, the HTC Vive Focus 3, which I'm going to be talking about a little bit later in the video. They had multiple setups for the Pico products. One of them was the Pico G2 4K. One of them was the Pico Neo 3 Pro with a Ultra Leap 170-degree sensor attached to it, and then the Pico Neo 3 Pro with the Pico Neo 3 Pro controllers. I used the one with the controllers, did a couple little demos. Tracking was pretty good. Most of it felt on par with the Quest 2. Controllers were a little bit more bulky. I'm not sure, I didn't like open the controllers or look at the batteries or things of that nature. I don't know if it's a USB-C chargeable all-in-one component, or if there's batteries or what have you. Weight seems similar to the Quest 2 in a lot of ways. I did feel like the head strap that mounts to the Pico Neo 3 Pro was a bit more comfortable than what you would get with a Quest device. But otherwise, it's very similar in many, many ways. The next device, though, that I tried was something very unique, at least in my opinion. And it was the Olfactory VR, or OVR technology inhale device. And what this product does is it incorporates a sense of smell into VR experiences. So there's a small little sensor that goes in front of your nose, and they have a scent pack, and it emits those scents based on your activity within the experiences. So the first experience I got to try was picking up a rose out of a flower box. And as you moved toward the box, you could smell what smelled like walking past a rose bush, for example. And then as you took the rose out of the box, that smell of the rose started to get more and more powerful until, if you sniffed it in front of your nose, it overwhelmed you, just like if you sniff a real rose. Then they said, oh, try smelling the stem. And it smelled like the stem of a rose. Oh, try smelling the root or the bulb at the bottom of the rose. And it smelled like dirt or earth, like a root would smell. And it blew me away, honestly. It was super, super impressive. Moved through different scenes. The second scene was a campfire, and you could smell the wood chips burning and floating in the air. And as you got closer to the fire, the wood smell got more and more powerful. There was also a stick with a marshmallow on it. If you picked it up and smelled the marshmallow before you did anything to it, it smelled like a sweet marshmallow. Put the marshmallow into the campfire, let it smoke a little bit, you get that smoky smell of like if you're melting a marshmallow or roasting a marshmallow in a campfire. Again, super impressive. There were a couple of other experiences. One was a waterfall you could smell, and then there were some unknown scents. The next couple of experiences I did were really meant to be used for guided meditations. And they described also a package that you probably don't want to smell. They have a trauma pack of different scents that is used to help treat people with PTSD. So horrible scents like maybe gasoline on fire, or things of that nature, things that wouldn't necessarily be pleasant smelling, but it helps in situations where people are dealing with post-traumatic stress. So as someone that works in the medical industry as a day job, it was very intriguing to me to experience that smell uh, and understand how that therapy could work. Um, this is not, again, a consumer product. The costs are very expensive. It's not something that you would pick up and do the sense of Skyrim, for example. But the technology was awesome to experience. It is safe technology. There were previously a couple of attempts on Kickstarter for products. One was called Feel Real, that was denied for sale because they used vaping technology. This does not use any type of vaping technology. It is all water-based scents, and it was pretty impressive. Up next, I did get the opportunity to check out, at least for a brief demo, the Lynx R1. I backed Lynx R1 on Kickstarter, kind of sight unseen, trusting that this was a product that I would want to have and an investment I'd want to make. Stan from the Lynx team flew out from France just to do these demos. He actually flew back later in the weekend, and just nonstop was everywhere I went. You could find him even at some of the off-site VR events. So props to him. I cannot believe the energy he still has through this whole Kickstarter campaign, through this whole development cycle for this product. But he believes in this product enough to do all of this. And after having tried it, I believe in it too. It offers both very good full color pass-through AR and VR experiences. The demo I was able to do is similar. If you watch other VR YouTubers, you've probably seen it. A few VR YouTubers have had the opportunity to visit France and check out this device. And I got to be in a place with the solar system model in front of me that was fully isolated in virtual reality, and then using hand tracking, which does use the 170-degree ultra leap sensor incorporated into the device. I was able to pick up planets, for example, or the sun, and move out of that virtual environment and into pass-through AR mode. And it sounds simple, but when you experience that for yourself, it's really cool. I'd only ever really experienced AR moving into VR and back in a game called Project Ghost that was demoed at GDC a few years back on a Vive Pro. This was next level because it was full color pass through, and it seamlessly moved from a VR environment to an AR environment and back, and it was very cool. So having the Lynx demo really confirmed for me that it was the right choice to back it. I paid $4.99 on Kickstarter. I did also pick up the optional controllers. I think the hand tracking is probably what I'm going to be using the most, but it is also, there are Finch-based controllers that are available that you can use for Steam VR and other experiences. So I did pick those up as well. When that ships early next year, I'll definitely talk a lot more about it. But I was super excited to be able to try it, and more to come as time goes on. Definitely a winner in my book. I know the price has gone up to $5.99 at this point because the Kickstarter has ended. But I do think at this point, especially if you're looking for a device to develop for augmented reality experiences, pass-through AR I think is going to be the immediate future beyond using a cell phone. I just don't think the field of view and the way that things are controlled on a set of AR glasses is there just yet. That's not to say that by the time this ships, there's not going to be a product coming 6 months later that does things better. But at least for right now, if that's something that you have a huge interest in, the Lynx R1 is a very cool piece of kit, and I'm excited to dive into it early next year. I got to revisit the Tilt 5 system. Tilt 5 has a set of AR glasses and a wand-style controller that you can also turn and use similar to a gamepad functions. And how it works is it actually directs the AR experiences onto a specific reflective surface. So it almost comes with a game board, essentially. So it is essentially making tabletop experiences with augmented reality. I got to try it back at PAX West 2019. Had a lot of fun with it. I think it's a really cool piece of kit, but it's not something that I have a lot of room for that I can really practically use, at least in my home. And one of the other things I would say is, especially if you're going to be playing a lot of multiplayer games, you really need to have a Tilt 5 set for each player for it to be a practical gathering experience. So pulling everyone into, let's say, a Dungeons and Dragons game, for example. If you were using like one of the dungeon creator tools that's being made for Tilt 5, you'd want every player to have that experience. So I feel like you'd want 6 headsets looking at the same board, for example, if you have 6 players. So right now, I think it's a very promising thing. I think it is one of the things I heard the founders describing was it could almost be like the Atari 2600 era. And I agree, like for the Atari 2600, you had to have a joystick for every player in front of that television. I think you'd need to have a Tilt 5 for every player to make it a practical tabletop experience for multiple players in one location. Now, if you're playing with people remotely and everybody has a Tilt 5 system, I think it would be awesome in those circumstances where you have the board, your friend across the country has the board, your friend in another country has the board, and you're all playing together. Those types of situations, I think it would be awesome. But if you're using it in a group setting, I almost, right now at least, feel like playing a board game as a board game may be a more practical experience right now. I think as technology advances, as things become less expensive, maybe you can buy a package that has 4 to 6 Tilt 5 headsets in it. I know they had something similar on the Kickstarter, but it's kind of still a little bit expensive. Once that technology becomes more readily available at a very low price point, I could totally see this replacing all board games and being your single point of entertainment for tabletop. But for right now, it's still a little bit pricey, but it's exciting to see it come to market. It is something that is somewhat unique of a product, and I'm excited to see what developers do with it, and also what the reception is for people that back this on Kickstarter, because I think it is going to be something that's an exciting tabletop toy, if you will. I also got to check out a couple of glove-based peripherals. One I actually got to demo on my own hands, called the SenseGlove Nova. That particular product is a pair of gloves. I believe the retail price is around $5,000 for 2 gloves. And while it worked, the demo that I tried was a little bit clunky. It tethered to your Oculus Quest 2 with the Quest 2 controllers kind of clamped onto the gloves, and then the gloves had specific resistance and force feedback and sensors in them. There's a product that's in the works right now for almost like an open source glove, and I believe it's called Lucid VR, if I remember correctly. And I felt like they weren't that far off from each other. They used very similar technologies. The open source product is still a little bit more bulky than the SenseGlove Nova, but otherwise they didn't seem that far off from one another. So if you're in the market for a glove and you have that DIY sensibility, I definitely suggest looking into building your own do-it-yourself gloves rather than spending the money on the SenseGlove Nova at the current time. Now, if you're in an industry and you're trying to use this as a training tool or things of that nature, SenseGlove is going to be the way to go because you can pick it up, put your employees into it, and have them start learning those training experiences, having almost real grip and things of that nature as you go. The other glove product that I got to see, but not try, was called HaptX. HaptX brought their Dev Kit 2, which was a gigantic, basically the size of a table box with some air tubes and a bunch of other things coming out of it that went to a giant glove that then had to be formed to your hand using different straps and things of that nature. They actually measured your hand size for each user. And what's unique about it is it actually has sensors so that you can actually feel the surfaces when you're touching things in virtual reality. But it is a huge, huge product. It is definitely not something that you would be able to market to someone. But it was impressive to see as people would be able to like wave their hand over some stalks of wheat and feel it touching them, or put their hand over a windmill and either feel the blades or feel the wind coming off the top of the blades as the closer that they got to it, or squeeze a ball and be able to either squeeze that ball if it's squeezable, or form their hand around the ball and throw it, for example. So those types of technology right now are being experimented on, and seeing that firsthand was pretty cool. I did not get the opportunity to try that demo. It was the most popular booth at all of AWE. In fact, they won Best in Show for virtual reality because of the popularity and the interest in that particular product. I will say there's another company, they're called Meta, who today, at the time that I'm recording this, it'll be about a week ago probably by the time this comes out, showed some footage of their glove prototype, and it seemed remarkably similar to what HaptX has. I don't know how similar, but the technology seemed to be going along the same path, if that makes sense. So it'll be interesting to see what 5 years from now looks like with either one of these companies, to see how this has progressed and what decisions are made to make them smaller, lighter, and more practical for consumer use. Or if this type of thing just gets abandoned altogether and we just use brain-computer interfaces for everything. We'll see. I have no idea. So to wrap this up, a couple of other things that I did get to try after AWE. I got to try the Vive Flow and the Vive Focus 3 at a local Silicon Valley VR meetup, and those devices both impressed me. The Vive Focus 3, I think primarily in the future is going to be the go-to for location-based VR experiences for a number of reasons. One is it's got a great counterbalance system with swappable batteries on the back, and it's trackable in a huge area at this point. They said that it's theoretically going to be trackable in an area now of 1,000 square meters. And they also recently added the ability to, if you draw a map of the area that you're going to be using, you can copy that map to multiple devices. So think about the situation of you have what used to be a laser tag arena in a warehouse, and you've got specific walls and specific areas and things of that nature. You could actually map that all out and then deploy that single map to multiple headsets. So you can have every player have that same map. One of the challenges I've had with the only game that's similar to what I just described that I have, which is Space Pirate Trainer DX, which has arena mode at this point, which is a 2-player game, is building a co-location map, because you have to draw Guardian using your Quest 2, and then you have to try to do the exact same Guardian using a second device. And when you're using a very large Guardian, everything has to be very, very particularly lined up. It's actually super challenging. So being able to hit a button and have that map copy over to other devices is huge. And I will say, since AWE has ended, the IAAPA conference has started. That's a international amusement parks and arcades, I believe, conference. And there have been a ton of these announcements for location-based VR experiences that are going to be powered by this technology. So I'm really excited to see what people build with the Focus 3 or with future devices that have similar technology. And I want to be running around your arcades next year or 2 years from now. So keep me posted. And then the final device that I got to check out was the Vive Flow. In my last video that was like this, where I was talking about a month ago, I had some reservation about the Vive Flow. I had pre-ordered and then I hesitated and I canceled my pre-order because I wasn't really sure how I was going to feel with this device or if this device was for me. Having demoed the device, at least my initial impressions are this is a really cool device. It's super comfortable, it's very lightweight, it doesn't have a back on it, so you should be able to use it lying down. It is a 6-DoF headset with a 3-DoF control scheme. Right now, that control scheme is phone as controller, or PAC, as they put it. But it uses some interesting gestures on the phone, so it's not necessarily click your phone in a specific spot. It's click your phone using 2 thumbs to activate one thing, or swipe up or down to activate another, which makes it a little bit easier to use the phone as a controller than if you picture having like a touchpad on your phone that you can't even see because you have a headset on. I enjoyed my demo. I did Art Plunge. I did a couple of other short experiences with it. But I've actually talked to the folks at HTC, and they're going to send me a loan device so that I'm going to spend a bit more time with the Vive Flow in December. So I will give you my final thoughts on that device as time goes on. So stay tuned. I'll have more information. I'll actually make some videos using the Vive Flow and also telling you more about who I think it's for and different experiences that I have in the device over the coming month or so. Overall, I really had an awesome time at AWE, primarily reconnecting with people from the community, seeing people that I haven't seen for a couple of years or that I've never seen in person before, and also kind of reaffirming my place in this community. Sitting at home making videos or talking to people online is not the same as going somewhere and people recognizing me and thanking me for the work that I do, or me being able to geek out over the same things with people in person. So it meant a lot to me to be able to go to this conference and to be able to see friends or be able to meet new people who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting before. I also was inspired by people like Kent Bai to actually kind of live tweet as I was going through the experience. It was a remarkable experience. It was, well, awesome. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll be back with more VR and AR content soon. Until next time, get out there and enjoy some VR, AR for yourself, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye now.